Hi, everybody. This is Paul Garrard. I'm a student loan consultant, and I am very pleased to be working with the American Dental Education Association, ADEA. We've put together some important information for you about borrowing, and this is designed specifically for the incoming class of 2027. In this short module, we're going to look at some cost considerations, some things in the cost of attendance that you have some control over to help reduce your debt. We'll take a look at dental school debt and your student loan portfolios, the kind of loans you'll be borrowing for dental school if you do need to borrow. We're going to give you a quick look at the repayment strategies of your colleagues who've already gone to dental school and graduated, and then we'll wrap this up with some action items and some resources to help you along the way. Now we start with some simple cost considerations. If you're going to be on financial aid, every year it's very important for you to know the cost of attendance, also called the financial aid budget. This is the number that lists all the different anticipated expenses that you'll have that year. You can find out from your financial aid office that number. You may have already seen it on their website. Now, folks, in the listing of expenses, there are going to be some things in there that you have no control over, such as tuition and fees, but there will be some things that comprise your monthly living allowance, rent, utilities, etc. And it's very important that you know what that monthly living allowance is and that you stay at that number or under it as you borrow for dental school. Never borrow more than you need. You're going to find out that you can borrow up to the full cost of attendance with two federal loans, direct unsub and direct plus, but don't assume you need to, especially if you're keeping your monthly living allowance under the allowed amount in the cost of attendance number. Be cautious about private loans. We're going to look at federal loans and private loans here in just a moment, but if you're considering a private loan, always talk with your financial aid officer first. Now, we referenced on the earlier slides some items in your cost of attendance number that you have control over and some that you don't. This is just a sample cost of attendance for someone attending a school where the total cost of attendance is around $96,000. You'll see that there are some items in here: room and board, transportation, and personal expenses. These items highlighted in red that you should have some control over. And we talked about the monthly living allowance. On a 9-month budget, the monthly living allowance for this borrower at this particular school would be about $2,400 a month. So once again, you need to find out this number or these numbers at your particular dental school, figure out the monthly living allowance and stay at that or under it as you go through dental school. Now, once you know the monthly living allowance within your budget, that's your guide. But if you make poor budgeting decisions during dental school and you live beyond that monthly living allowance, perhaps with credit cards, folks, you may be forced into a repayment plan after you graduate from dental school that you really don't want. What about borrowing under your cost of attendance? If you look at the monthly living allowance and you look at the total cost of attendance and you start borrowing under the full cost of attendance, now you've got to borrow enough to cover tuition and fees, the expenses for the school. But if you can borrow under your monthly living allowance, what that will do is it puts you in a position where if you need the funds later, you can borrow them, because remember, you can always borrow up to the full cost of attendance. You just don't have to do it when you first start. If you start under your cost of attendance, you're preserving the option to borrow more money later if you need it. But very important, you're delaying the start of interest accrual on those additional funds. And direct unsub and direct plus, the interest starts to build as soon as you take the funds out. So for example, if your budget is $90,000 and you think you can get by with $85,000, we'll start with that. If you find out you need additional funds before the end of the year, you can borrow the additional $5,000 amount up to the cost of attendance, and you delayed the start of interest accrual on those funds. Not tracking your loans each year. There's a terrific calculator known as the AAMC ADEA Dental Loan Organizer and Calculator. We'll reference that at the end of this workshop. If you don't track your loans each year, you could have sticker shock when you graduate and go through your senior loan exit interview. Now, in case you're curious, the average debt for an indebted dental school graduate in the class of 2022 was $293,900. Now, there's some good news and some not so good news regarding dental school borrowing. First of all, the good news, dental school graduates have a terrific reputation for repayment. So even though the debt may seem high or be high, you guys have a great reputation for repaying your loans after you graduate from dental school. As we've mentioned before, federal loans, the Direct Unsub and Grad Plus, those two combined can cover the entire cost of attendance if needed. Remember, just because you can borrow the full cost of attendance doesn't mean you have to. But those two federal loans, Direct Unsub and Direct Plus, will let you do that. In all likelihood, you're going to have the convenience of one loan servicer for all of your federal loans. So you may come out of dental school with a lot of loans and perhaps high debt, but in all likelihood, you'll have the convenience of having them all under one roof with one loan servicer. And also, there are multiple repayment options available on federal loans, including payments tied to income, not the amount that you borrowed. But it's not all good news. The interest rate maximums are high, 9.5% for Direct Unsub and 10.5% for Direct Plus. And remember, these loans are unsubsidized. That means no one is paying the interest for you. Once the loan is dispersed, interest starts to build up. That's also called interest accrual. And the Direct Plus, the Grad Plus, may actually encourage excessive borrowing when you really don't need the funds. So once again, just because you can use the Grad Plus with Direct Unsub to borrow up to the full cost of attendance, that doesn't mean you have to. Now, this is a list of some different loans that you may end up with in your student loan portfolio. We've highlighted Direct Unsub, sometimes called Stafford, and Direct Plus, also referred to as Grad Plus, because those two federal loans will make up for many of you the bulk of, if not the entirety, of your student loan portfolio in dental school. Check with your financial aid office to see if they have available any campus-based loans. These are loans that come directly from the school, health profession student loans, loans for disadvantaged students, and occasionally a school will have their own institutional loan funds. Some of you will have private loans from college or a post-bac program, and it's not that you can't borrow private loans for dental school, but once again, we would strongly encourage you to talk with your financial aid office before you take out a private loan for dental school. Now let's take a quick look at the Direct Unsubsidized loan and the Direct Plus loan, also called Grad Plus, because for many of you, these two loans are going to make up the bulk of, if not the entirety of, your student loan portfolio. The Direct Unsub, which is sometimes still referred to as the Stafford loan, the maximum amount per year is $40,500, but that's based on a 9-month budget. If your duration of your budget is longer than 9 months, that can be prorated up. These loans have fixed interest rates, and remember, the rates change on new loans every July 1. The new rate for the 2023-24 year on Direct Unsub is 7.05%. These loans have a 6-month grace period, meaning they come due 6 months after you graduate or drop below half-time status. The lender is the federal government, but they assign all the repayment correspondence to a third-party loan servicer. Very important for you to know who that is. You will find that out when you take out your very first loan. Since this is a federal loan, there are multiple repayment provisions available, including income-driven repayment plans, and these loans are eligible for forgiveness and forgiveness under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Now, the Direct Plus loan, or the Grad Plus loan as it is often called, these are the loans you take out after you have maxed out your eligibility with Direct Unsub. So once again, always take out the maximum Direct Unsub first before you take out a Direct Plus loan. There's no annual limit other than the cost of attendance minus all other aid, including Direct Unsub. Just like Direct Unsub, these loans have fixed interest rates. These rates are always 1 full point higher than Direct Unsub, and so the new rate for the 2023-24 academic year is 8.05%. These loans don't have a grace period, but they have something similar called a 6-month post-enrollment deferment. Long story short, these will come due 6 months after you graduate from dental school or drop below half-time status. Once again, the lender is the federal government, but they assign the correspondence of these loans to a third-party servicer. You'll have the same loan servicer for Direct Plus as you do for your Direct Unsub. Since these are federal loans, there are multiple repayment provisions with Grad Plus loans, including income-driven repayment plans, and these loans are eligible for forgiveness and forgiveness under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Now, as you look at how much you're going to have to borrow from dental school, hopefully you've been able to secure some grant or scholarship funds, even if it's not a lot, something to help you reduce how much money you're going to have to borrow. But as you look at your cost of attendance number, that financial aid budget, and you look at how much money you think you're really going to need, and you know what your living allowance is, there are at least two approaches to borrowing that may help you. Number one, look at that budget, and if you think you can live under the monthly living allowance, we'll start out, folks, by borrowing under the cost of attendance, and you can increase borrowing later if needed. Remember, you can always borrow up to the full cost. You just don't have to do it right out of the gate. You have to borrow enough to cover the tuition and fee expenses and to have enough to live on. But if you can live under that financial aid living allowance in your budget, start out under the cost of attendance number. That delays interest accrual, which we talked about, and that will help reduce your repayment costs, and it also helps promote responsible budgeting. Now, some of you may want to start out by borrowing the full cost of attendance. Perhaps you're attending a dental school in a part of the country or a city you're not really familiar with, and you think, I'll just go ahead and borrow the full cost of attendance. And then after a month or two, you find out you really don't need those funds. If that's the case, work with your financial aid office to return the funds you don't need. And if you do that within 120 days, you are charged no interest and no fees on those loans. So two approaches to borrowing. So how in the world are dental school graduates repaying their loans? Well, we'll share with you the same thing we share with them as they're about to graduate, as they're going through their senior loan exit interview. When your loans come due, once again, about 6 months after you graduate, find a repayment plan of the available ones with the federal loans that you have. Find a repayment plan with a comfortable or affordable, a manageable required minimum monthly payment, and then decide if you want to overpay and be aggressive, or perhaps you simply want to make minimum payments, which you might do if you happen to have some cash flow challenges at that point. Some dental school graduates are refinancing their debt with a private lender for a lower rate. The typical drill, and there are some exceptions, but the typical drill is to borrow federal loans to keep all the repayment flexibility options open with those loans. But once you graduate from dental school, consider refinancing those at a lower rate with a private lender. Some borrowers may be interested in the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. You can get details at studentaid.gov/public service. This is where you work for 10 years after dental school in the nonprofit sector, and your debt is forgiven after that period of time, tax-free. You may also want to consider what are called loan repayment assistance programs. This is where you get financial support to help pay down your loans in exchange for a service commitment. Now, we'd like to close up this short workshop or presentation with some action items for you. Be sure you stay in touch with the financial aid office, whether it's a standalone dental school financial aid office, in other words, somebody at the dental school to help you, or if financial aid is handled on a main campus or university campus office. If that's the case, be sure you know who in the main campus office handles financial aid for dental school students. And don't miss any deadlines, especially for grants and scholarships, because that will help reduce how much you have to borrow. As we've said repeatedly, folks, find out the monthly living allowance in your cost of attendance number and stay at or under that amount, and never ever borrow more than you really need. Once you take out your first loan, find out who the loan servicer is and set up an online account with them. And we would strongly encourage you to use the AAMC ADEA Dental Loan Organizer and Calculator, known as DLOC. You can track your loans there and also estimate future repayment and forgiveness options. And lastly, very respectfully, please be cautious where you get information about student loans. There is a lot of incomplete and inaccurate information, especially on social media. Here's a listing of some resources that should help, some of which we've already referenced. Your financial aid office can help. Also at ADEA.org, you'll find a listing of financial resources for students. The Dental Loan Organizer and Calculator, known as DLOC, which is free to you for 7 years. Your loan servicer's website that we just referenced. And you can also get information on federal student aid at studentaid.gov. We hope the information in this module has been helpful to you. On behalf of the American Dental Education Association, congratulations and good luck to you as a member of the class of 2027.